Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Advocacy Amplify, where real story meets real change. I am not alone in the studio. I've got right here my guest, Mr. Taiwo Adeleke, who is a medical expert, a psychologist precisely from ROD Foundation. Let's get to meet him. All right, Mr. Taiwo, good to meet you.
Good morning.
I know you, but they don't know you, so let our listeners get to know you.
Okay. So my name is Adeleke Taiwo, and I am a clinical psychologist, and I work with ROD Trauma Care Foundation, where we provide mental health care, psychotherapy, counseling, and advocacy. And we have been working for over 3 years and doing our best to provide psychological services for free.
All right, thank you so much. I'm sure that you've met with Mr. Taiwo, but we already met behind scene before now. So yes, we're basically going to be talking about what happens to minors. When I mean minors, those children that are behind bars, what do you think happens to them? And that's what we're going to be discussing today. And most importantly, how can we do better? Basically, we're focusing on the mental health of minors behind bars as well as their rehabilitation. So very quickly, we get into the talk of the day. So recently, Mr. Taiwo, myself, we were present at the Correctional Center here in Lagos. And trust me, if you ask me, I have my reservations. I have something to talk about that visit to that center. But then, I am not the talk of the town today. I'm going to leave it to Taiwo to have this conversation. So can you briefly tell us, share your experience visiting the Correctional Center and what struck you the most during your time there?
Okay, thank you so much. So that Correctional Center is a center for boys. So all the people that we met there are young boys. And one of the most striking things is that some of them look very young, like maybe 13, 14. So the young age is actually something of note, because you'd think that, okay, the boys that are in here cannot just be brought here unless they have done something.
Yeah.
So that, puzzles you that, okay, what could this person, this young, have done to
be here,
to get into that kind of facility? So it was very striking. And with young boys, many of them were full of energy. They were bursting with energy and zest. And you know that these young men have so much more to give than being confined in this place. So you just had to feel for them that way, and then marvel at the young age at which they are already in that correctional facility.
That's very correct, because like I said, if you ask me, I have something to say. It's so, like, the highlight of this thing is to say that these children are under 18 years, right, Taiwo? Yes, they were under 18, and you want to imagine what are these children doing here. Now, let's make it more realistic, Taiwo. Let's paint a picture. Imagine a child being locked up in a room for a very long time. Okay, now in that room, there's everything that child needs to, do life there. But the child has been locked in that building for a very long time. First off, what do you think that does to that child? Do you think it helps the child or it harms the child? Being there for, and the child doesn't even know when he's going to leave that place, or he's there, yet everything that is needed for the child is available. Do you think it helps that child or it harms the child?
Okay, when we say a child, we're describing certain age. Now you've said that most of the boys in that place are under 18,
yes,
if not all of them. Now there's something about very young people, children within that age, or let's say young boys or young men under 18. People of such age want to be independent, and it is not a wish. It is how psychologically they have to be at that age. There's a stage of psychological development.
That's right.
So they want to be independent. They want to show initiative. they want to express themselves. So when someone gets locked or restricted in a place at that age, so the person gets deprived. So whether they know it or not, whether they say it or not, there's a sense of unspoken psychological deprivation, emotional deprivation, social deprivation, and they are going to experience a lot of that. And that can lead to a chain of psychological reactions.
Now, before you get into that, let's paint the picture in deeper. You were at the correctional center that day. Now, those children in that space for a very long time, and some of them didn't even know when they're going to get out of that place. They don't know when they're going out of there. So what do you think it does to them mentally and emotionally? What do you think? Or you think it doesn't have any adverse effect on them?
It goes in two ways, really. If I'm talking about the experience I saw on that day, most of them surprisingly looked happy. And you know why? Because they are young. They do not all of them do, but some of them do not understand the meaning and essence of being in that place. And because they are young people of the same age, they easily form friendship. So many of them looked happy, looked like they were enjoying themselves. So that will be on the surface. But when you want to look at it emotionally, what it means for them, now, they have parents, they have siblings, they have close people and loved ones, and they are cut off from these people. So it gives them that psychological sense of isolation, that psychological sense of detachment from people to which they should be attached. So individually, for each of them, it's always going to be in their times of personal reflection, which they actually have so much of because of the restricted place they are. They can start looking at it like, what is the meaning? They could start exploring the meaning, finding meaning, and then they start feeling lonely. They start having this sense of longing that cannot be met. So one of the things they'll be experiencing the most is a sense of helplessness and a sense of hopelessness. And if help does not come on time, it can even spiral into some worthlessness because they have a lot of energy, they have a lot of initiative, but they cannot deploy because they are restricted or confined in a place. So they start doubting themselves and start feeling worthless. Because if you can do so much, but you cannot do it because you are held back, because you are restricted, after some time, you start questioning if actually you can do it. You start asking yourself if you've got what it takes because you don't even have an opportunity to do it. So I like to believe that personally, going away from the superficial playing and maybe a sense of happiness they had on that day, they'll be having a lot of personal reflections around hopelessness, worthlessness, because of the fact that they are restricted in that space, in that facility.
So, Taiwo, are you saying that they're prone to having identity crisis at some point?
Identity crisis and trauma is something that is likely to be an experience for the young boys. And I'll tell you why. There's something called psychosocial stages of development. The stages are 8 in number. So the number 5 stage is called identity and role confusion. Now, that starts about the time when a child becomes a teenager. That is the time when you start forming identity, when you start acquiring the beliefs, ideals, and values that will make up the kind of person you are going to be. So when we now have young people, very young boys, due to certain and many reasons, confined in a place, they are not able to acquire those ideals and those values because they are restricted. Of course, there are many things they are exposed to, but it is not like finding yourself in the natural world.
That's right.
So they are going to have identity crisis most likely because they are not having the opportunity to form proper identity at that stage of life.
So they don't have the ability to express themselves beyond the confines.
Exactly. They don't have the ability to express themselves. Independence and social interaction are two factors that will actually help in forming identity. And they don't have those as much as they should. And also, it also happens that at that stage, they are unable to gain what you need to meet up with societal standards and expectations. So it's really a crucial time, and it's something that requires maybe revising of the set of principles or plans that they run with in that facility, because the age and stage at which they are in that place is where they start forming identity, forming personality, and you need independence and autonomy and social interaction to find that as much as possible.
Thank you so very much, Taiwo. It says a lot here. Now, we've talked about this problem. So what do you think we can do when it comes to the psychological well-being, the mental well-being? What do you think can be done? What would you advise we do to help these children?
My advice would be that these children are helped individually. You create personal problems for them. Like they are all from different backgrounds.
That's right.
In fact, the circumstances that got them into the facility are different. And one day when they leave, they also leave and go back to their different places, living their separate lives. So what I think should be integrated into that program, that correctional program, is that every child should be taken as an individual. Every child's mental health and psychological development should be taken individually, and a set of program needs to be created for that child, starting with assessment, psychological assessment,
yes,
personality assessment. There are some personality assessments for young children. Of course, until they become adults, the personality doesn't completely form. But even now, they have their individual psychological needs, psychosocial needs. So programs need to be developed for those children individually. But we've also talked about social interaction. It's good that they are there so they can socialize and develop socially. But individual program is very important so that these children will find themselves, create a sense of meaning in life by themselves, create a sense of self, we call it self-concept for themselves, create a self-concept, meaning and
sense of belonging, discovering themselves.
Exactly, personally.
That's a very good one. Thank you so much, Mr. Taiwo. And to our watchers and listeners out there, I'm sure that you've heard from Taiwo Adeleke, who is the medical expert, basically a psychologist at the foundation. So it's good to talk about the problem, but the most important thing that we must know is how do we solve this problem? How do we get better? Thank you so much. So very quickly, we'll be bringing in our lawyer to join us in this conversation, because we also have to talk about their rehabilitation. What happens to them after they exit the prison? So yes, let's go on a break and we'll be right back shortly.